Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Weekend Away. The Weekend Away is an American thriller that tells the story of a woman named Beth, who goes on vacation in Croatia to spend a weekend with her friend Kate and escape the stress of her daily life back home in London. After a night of drinking, Beth wakes up to find out that Kate has gone missing. As Beth goes about investigating her friend's whereabouts, suspicion starts being placed on her by the local authorities. Because of this, she ends up in a race against time as she tries to find out what really happened to Kate, and her efforts to clear her name result in a devastating secret being revealed. The movie has generic written all over it, and truth be told, I don't mind watching a mediocre thriller as long as it's able to maintain suspense. Sadly, this movie is anything but suspenseful, as its story's pacing is all over the place, only barely salvaged by its main character. Leighton Meester plays the lead role of Beth in this movie, and she's easily the best thing about it. She becomes increasingly more panicked as she tries to find out what happened to her friend, which is made more nerve-wracking by the fact that she's in a foreign country, so her character is at least sympathetic to some degree. Some credit should be given to the filmmakers as well for at least trying to flesh out Beth's background more. The fact that she's an American living in London and she has a family of her own does make her somewhat interesting, even if it doesn't connect all that much to the story at hand. The rest of the characters are pretty one-dimensional. It feels like everyone else that isn't Beth is a suspect responsible for kidnapping Kate. This makes it hard from the audience's perspective to pin down who it could be, because the movie always switches from one character to the next. Beth's husband Rob is nothing more than, well, Beth's husband. He's so bland that I can't think of much else to say about him, other than that he shows up in Croatia to comfort Beth for a day and takes off back to London again. His character added nothing to the movie. Beth also receives help from this random taxi driver named Zane, who is unusually invested in helping her try to find Kate. He doesn't seem to have any problem abandoning his job at all hours of the day trying to help this woman he barely knows, and somehow is allowed to beat people up on the streets without suffering any consequences. Again, there is an attempt to flesh out his character more, but it doesn't make up for how ridiculous his willingness to help Beth is. There are even a few times where Beth is caught in a tense situation and he'll just show up out of nowhere to save the day, which completely ruins suspense. Even the missing girl, Kate, isn't all that likable. There's supposed to be some sort of past beef between her and Beth, but it's barely explained about what it's supposed to be, and in the little screen time she does have, she displays an obnoxious personality that leaves her anything but endearing. Through her character, the movie pushes a lot of weird messages about female empowerment in pretty immature fashion, specifically in how often she has sex and enjoys it, and suggesting that Beth should divorce her husband to collect alimony. Now, I'm not against having feminist themes in movies, and this one had the potential to pull them off, but as with the characters, they end up being generic and completely lacking in subtlety. It even results in bad dialogue, like when Beth complains out loud, in her own words, that her boobs feel like exploding just from drinking liquor. And at the risk of sounding more controversial than I might already be, I find the premise itself to be a bit strange. Maybe it's just me, but if I were married, I wouldn't be comfortable letting my wife go on a drunk getaway in a foreign country by herself. Yet here, Rob has no problem with it. This does make some sense since he does have a child with Beth and someone has to raise it, but that doesn't mean they couldn't make it a family vacation, and Rob ends up going there anyway. Given what happens later in the movie, it likely would have made things less tense between Beth and Kate. But instead, the audience is subject to Beth's constant back and forth interactions from one character to another, which leaves the mystery behind Kate's disappearance moving at a snail's pace and going nowhere up until the third act or so, making the story a boring chore to sit through. Occasionally, the movie remembers it's a thriller and features some suspenseful scenes, like when Beth discovers a clue or when Zane is chasing after a suspect, but there's so little build-up toward these sequences that I ended up feeling underwhelmed when they finally took place. The movie has a huge issue when it comes to pacing. In fact, I would say it's the biggest problem it has. Barely anything interesting happens in the first two acts, and then all of a sudden things ramp up in the last half hour or so. It feels like the movie doesn't know if it wants to be a mystery or a thriller, so it sort of mashes the two genres together in awkward fashion. Seeing the movie switch from moving too slow to too fast was really jarring. There was either too little or too much information to process at any given moment. Now, one of the things I did like was the Croatian scenery. The cinematography in general is pretty good, but seeing Croatian architecture in the background added much needed flavor to the movie's otherwise bland story. Most of the technical presentation is good overall, though I did take issue with how it was edited at times. The movie sometimes shows brief dream sequences of Beth's night out that are supposed to give a clue, but they're too brief to take anything away from them, and a lot of the time they're just straight up misleading. I found myself baffled with the way the story ended. The movie has a few twists before it happens, and I felt like I already knew who was responsible for Kate's disappearance before this final final twist occurred, yet it keeps dragging things out all the way to the end, which reduced the excitement of the big reveal when it finally happened. Overall, The Weekend Away is a disappointing thriller that does the bare minimum with trying to create tension and mystery surrounding its events. If you like thrillers, especially ones that take place in a foreign country outside of America, you might enjoy this a little bit, but for me it was too derivative and boring to care about. It's a shame because I like Leighton Meester's performance and it looks great on a technical level, but it fails to create lasting suspense, which is the one thing every thriller should have, and it doesn't help that the rest of its characters and themes are also lacking in depth. What did you think about this movie? Were you absorbed by the role of the lead character, or was it too predictable and slow paced for your liking? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Weekend Away. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Italian comedy, The Invisible Thread. Bye bye!